All right, guys, 11 properties, 11 income producing properties hit the market today in South Florida. It's going to be a good show. It's 11 properties that we're going to get to go through, anywhere from, let's see, from $1.275 million down to an affordable, what is that, $595,000. It could run the gamut. Let's see what our predictions are. I like these numbers, 11 properties, because it lets us know, like, hey, out of 11 properties, out of 10 properties, right, how many are making it. So it's a good sample size for us, right? So let's see, yeah, from 1.275 all the way down to $559,000. And price per square foot, this is the more exciting part, right? Price per square foot, guys, there's actually just, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, right, that are above $400. So we have potential for some really good deals today. Let's get started. Let's take a look at these deals. Now, that being said, what we always want to make sure, that we know what interest rate we're evaluating these properties on, because more than likely you're going to want to do one of the best things that you can do with real estate, and that is to pull leverage in order to buy it, right? Most other investments, you cannot use leverage. Like if you go and put money in the S&P 500, if you have $10 in the bank, well, guess what? $10 is all you're going to get to put into the S&P 500. Now, the best thing about real estate is not only that it can give you returns better than the S&P 500, but I could have as little as $3.50, and then the bank will lend me the other $96.50, right? That's called a down payment, and that particular down payment is an FHA down payment. But again, you could go, anywhere from, the 3.5% down payment to 25% down payment, and it's just gonna, improve your interest rates, different things. But anyway, that's a whole another episode. That's a whole different conversation. What we're looking for today, guys, is properties that could cash flow. Okay, whether you're using an FHA down payment or you're going to be using a DSCR loan, right? That is only going to be based off of the actual income that the property can produce. So with that being said, guys, let's dive right into it. As you guys probably know, one of the things that we go off of the interest rates, right, is we're going to look at the 30-year fixed rate mortgage in the United States and where it's at. We're going to use the average of the last week. And over the last week, as you guys can see here, the average rates are 6.37%. And so that is what we use in our calculator right over here. All right. We use that number. Okay. What's next? We want to know what the market is actually looking like in South Florida. So for that, we're going to go over here and we're going to look at this market watch. And now the one thing that I always want to look for every single day when we do this show is I want to see how many properties have hit the market and how many properties are actually seeing price decreases. And so, for a while now, we've been seeing pretty much a 1-to-1, right? For every home that hits the market new listings, we're having just as many houses have a price decrease. So, right, and it's actually, in this case, it's a little bit more, right? There's 2,107 homes that hit the market in the last 7 days, and there's 2,151 homes that have seen a price decrease, all right? So it's basically a 1-to-1, and what does that tell us, guys? That tells us that the probability of these new houses that just came onto the market having a price decrease somewhere along the way to getting to the closing table is very high, right? And so I say that to say what? When we're analyzing deals right now, right? The idea that we are going to be able to get a discount off of whatever sales price they have is pretty freaking realistic, okay? Especially if their numbers don't make sense, especially if we could prove to the seller, right, that we want to buy his deal, we love his deal, but they got to work with us in order for us to make this work. And that's where this calculator is really going to be your friend, because you're going to be able to go back to that seller and say, like, look, Mr. Seller, I'd love to make this work, but the numbers aren't numbering, the math isn't mathing. So you got to crunch the numbers again, sir. So with that being said, right, we use our numbers to help us and also to guide us, because we don't want to become emotional investors. Emotional investors, well, they're not investors, they're broke. They don't exist. They come in, they call themselves investors, they buy a property that they fantasize about fixing and getting all this money for, and then they actually don't get that money, and now they're broke. And they leave the game and they never invest in real estate again. And we're not in it to do that. We're in it to win it, right? We're in it for the long term. We're in it for the cash flow. And that's what we're going to be looking for on this show. It's one of the most important things that we look at. So with that being said, let's get right to it because there's 11 properties to analyze today. We're going to come down here. We're going to analyze these live, guys. So I haven't seen these properties, right? And we're going to see them right now for the first time. Okay, so I like to sort by price per square foot. Usually anything, just so you know, above $400 is probably not going to make sense, but we'd like to look at them anyway because sometimes there's information that's mislisted. And that is, again, another opportunity to get a good deal. So, okay, this one, $849,000, okay, we're going to put on the calculator right away. Duplex in Palm Beach, okay, it's currently paying $10,941 a year in taxes. It's a small duplex, just 1,552 square feet. Whoops. Okay. They don't tell us how much they're getting for rent, and they don't tell us what flood zone it's at. Let's look at the pictures first and see what's going on. All right. What we're looking for is the kind of quality, right, product that we are buying here. All right. And so this looks like a pretty good, like A quality. I've seen this property before. I think that they might have put more pictures up than last time. And that's why they might have relisted the property. This is wonky as hell. Like, yeah, that's super wonky, dude. Okay, weird. Yeah. Okay, 2 big garages. That's a plus because you could turn those garages into something else, you know. All right, so that's the property. All right, let's take a look at what they want. Okay, they say it's a rare investment opportunity featuring versatile space and strong income potential, situated on a double lot. This unique property offers a duplex along with a massive detached garage, making it ideal for investors, owning occupants, or anyone seeking multiple income streams. This duplex includes 2 units, a 1, 1.5, and a 2-1, both designed for comfortable living and consistent rental appeal, whether you blah, 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 blah. The standout is the detached 4-car garage, approximately 1,000 square foot of rentable space with a full bathroom. Okay, so that being said, they say that they're getting $1,800 for the 2-1, and they say they're getting $1,800 for the 1-1. Okay, they're not renting out that garage, right? So that's what's going on with that. But one thing should stand out really quick, right? Is that I just at this point, this property makes 0 cents, right? So why do they think that they could get so much money? Let's go a step further because it doesn't make sense this way. But I want to do, before we just do one strike, let's give them another chance, see if there's something that we can do with the rents, guys. All right? They say that there's a 1-1 that rents for $1,800, and then there's a 2-1 that rents for $1,900. I have that quite doesn't make sense for me, right? A 2-1 should rent out for more than the 1-1 rents out for. As a matter of fact, if you look at the median in Broward County, they rent out for about $360 more. So the question is, why is that 1-1, renting, or the 2-1 better yet, renting for the price that you're getting for that 1-1, right? It doesn't quite match up. Now, he's probably going to come and say like, hey, you could do a lot with that garage. Yes, but then that would increase the cost for me to actually, once I'm done with that garage, this property, instead of being $859,000 or $49,000, is going to end up being like $1 million, $1.1 million, $1.2 million. By the time I'm able to actually get permits and build out that garage into an ADU, like it would take more money. It would take a lot more money, and it wouldn't make this deal worth it. Although it is nice that they do have this other lot here, because you could maybe build something else here. Let's see. What is it zoned for? Multifamily, less than 10 units, okay? Okay, so with that being said, guys, there is a probability of a land play here where you could maybe build more units here, right? But, all right, suppose that this is 1,000 square feet. You turn that into 2 1-1s, okay? And you rent them out for the same price. Right now you're getting another $3,600. Right? Yeah. Let's just use this numbers, right? Even though the median is 1960, we know that the median is 1960 in Broward. Let's use this number as 1,800, right? Let's say we're getting another $3,600. Well, now it's looking a little bit better. And let's say in here you build another fourplex, guys. Another fourplex with 4 2-1s, right? And now this equals 4 times, right? 2-1 on, let's say another $1,800. 4 times this is, sorry guys, here we go. We'll make this equal to 1,800 times 4. Okay, now you're collecting $14,000, right? This would make this deal totally worth it, right? But you would need to build this garage out, right? And you would need to build something completely new here, a brand new quad, okay? How much do you think that you would need to build that quad out, right? It'd probably be about 2,000 square feet, and you're probably paying maybe about $350 a square foot. So let's say that it equals that plus 350 times 2,000 square feet. Okay, so now your price, right? Oh, plus the cost to actually build out that garage, right? And that's probably going to be like another at least $150,000, right? So now your purchase price to actually build all this stuff out, to use all the potential that this property could give you, would be about $1.7 million, and you're only making $14,000, right? Or you're making $14,000 a month. Obviously, your taxes will go through the roof here. You're probably gonna have like $25,000, if not $40,000 worth of taxes, right? And so the deal starts to not look as good, right? But I mean, these numbers do make sense, guys, right? Like going to our rent check, but we're making super huge assumptions. Super huge assumptions. This is something that I don't get into because I don't like construction. I like buying deals in areas that I think that I can just come in and that I'm going to be able to cash flow almost right away with just a couple of repairs. This one, in order for it to make it make sense, I would need to get permits for that, that garage, turn it into another duplex, and then build a whole nother, right? Even if they let me, build another whole quad on the other side. And it would totally change like the dynamic of the property. Maybe I'm not even able to get the rents just because I have so much unit mix there. Who knows, right? And so for that reason, guys, we don't really analyze these types of deals. It doesn't really make sense as it stands, just the way it is, in the 1% rule, right? At $849,000. I believe they're paying about $10,000 in taxes, and that they're only collecting this much money, right? It's a total see you later kind of a deal. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna discard this property, and we're gonna take a look at the next one. Okay, next up, it's a $1.2 million triplex. This time we're in Broward County, and they're currently paying $14,168 a year in taxes. Square feet wise, they have 2,244 square feet, okay? And they do tell us that they are collecting $6,100 a month in rent. And if you could do the 1% rule in your head really quick, we know that 1% of $1.2 million is $12,000, and $6,000 is half of $12,000. So right off the bat, we know that this deal is not gonna more than likely work out, but we could take a look at it nevertheless. All right, so look at the product. The product looks pretty good, just normal class, high C to like a B minus kind of a product here. All right. Let's look at the guts of this deal. So yeah, it's a 2 2-1s, right? You can see it right here. Two 1s, each one renting for about $2,200, and then a 1-1 renting for $1,650, right? So 2,200, 2,250, and then $1,650, and you end up with $6,100. And that's not enough to even pay the mortgage, right? If you were able to get this. And so for that reason, guys, it doesn't pass the 1% rule, right? Do the rents make sense? 2 1s in Broward County, 2 1s. I think that the rents might be a little bit overstated, okay? Because check this out, guys. They say that for the 1-1, they're getting 1650, which is right in our median. So like that sounds correct. But somehow for the 2-1s, they're getting 2250. Okay. So either the 1-1 is under rented, you could get more money for it, or that means that the product for the 2-1 is vastly superior to that 1-1 product. So it's something that you would need to check out. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say this is actually under rented, right? And that you could get the a little bit more than let's say that this is, since they're getting 2250, right, when you could normally get 1960, they're getting $300 more. Let's suppose that you could get another $200 more for this one. Where would the deal sit? It would still be super short of where we need it to be. At this point, the return on investment is less than half of what you can get in the S&P 500, right? So for that reason, it's 3 strikes. This deal's out. We're not going to go ahead and take a look at it. Okay, so we're going to discard this property. Next up, I believe it's just the same property. All right, we're going to discard this one too. Okay, that's our next deal right here. So our next deal, and it's the last one in the $400 per foot price range, but it's in the low 400s, okay? It's the $750,000 duplex in Broward County. They're currently paying $10,687 a year in taxes. Square feet wise, they have 1,796 square feet, okay? They don't tell us how much they're getting in rent or what flood zone they're in, okay? But let's take a look at the actual property. Okay, so it's 2 separate buildings. You see the insides are okay. They're not anything like, awesome. If you have a renter, they're just gonna be like, this is okay. Okay, let's look at the guts of this deal and see what's going on. This is a one-of-a-kind property featuring 2 homes on 1 lot, offering an exceptional investment opportunity, currently generating over $5,500 a month in rental income. This property is ideal for investors or owner-occupants seeking additional revenue. Both residents have been fully renovated and meticulously maintained. Must see to really appreciate all it has to offer. Okay, so they're saying that it has a 3-3 that's currently renting out for $3,500, and that they have a 2-2 renting out for $2,500. So if that's the case, guys, well, they're not making money there. This deal is not too bad. You could actually, it's on the 1% rule, it's a 0.8, right? And on the DSCR, it's actually making 125% of what the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, also known as your mortgage, right, would cost you. And at 125% debt service coverage ratio, right, a bank would more than likely be happy to lend you money to buy this property. Now, before we go further, let's make sure that these rents make sense, right? So they told us that this deal is in Hollywood, Florida. So it's in Broward County. They said they're getting $3,500 for their 3-3. Now in Broward County, right, a 3-2, right, on average rents out for $2,700, guys. And the maximum that I've seen for a duplex, right, or multifamily in Broward County is $3,800. They're damn close to the max. Now, this property for me doesn't really look, and you guys tell me, with these box ACs in the windows and that whatever it is, electrical panel in a bedroom, right? Would you like to put your kids sleeping in there next to a high voltage electrical panel? Not me. Not that I have kids, but still, like, I wouldn't put like my nieces or nephews in there. And then look at this, guys. Another box AC. So do you guys think that it actually rents out for this crazy amount of money? I don't think so. I don't think that this meets the rent check part, right? And then they say that for the 2-2, right, that they're getting $2,500. Well, 2-1 gets $1,960. So you're telling me that just because of that extra bathroom and this like just regular kind of condition apartment, you're getting that much money? Like, I don't think so. So I think that they're overstating the rent. And so for that reason, it doesn't pass my rent check, right? And the property, the way that it currently is, right, it's barely getting by. So it's barely beating the S&P 500. So it beats it, but just barely, right? Now, that being said, guys, you know, you could buy this property for as little as $26,000 if you use an FHA loan, okay? But if you do that, right, you wouldn't cash flow on this property until after almost 10 years, right? You would cash flow after 10 years if you buy using a 10% down payment. You would cash flow after 5 years. 25% down payment, you could cash flow on day one. And so that's a silver lining. But look at this, guys. Look at the cash flow right here for the 10%, where you could actually, sorry, the 25% down payment, right? It's barely there. As a matter of fact, you're only going to be making about $300 a month, right? If you could actually get these rents. So it all hinges on this property, on the rents. And I don't really see them making sense. And so for that reason, this property for me is going to be like a C class property. It has the potential to be a B class property, but I think that they are overstating the rents again. You know, go out there and check it, guys. But again, I think that there are properties out there that we're probably going to run into right now once we start getting to the lower price per square foot ranges that are going to be like, you know, low hanging fruit, right? This you could put it away, but just make it so that like you go through all the other good deals, and if those deals don't make sense, then you end up looking at this one. But for right now, not worth it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to discard it. Okay, next up, it's a $1.275 million fourplex in Miami-Dade County. Sorry, guys. Here we go. 1.25. Let's put it up on the calculator. $1.275 million fourplex in Miami. Currently paying $15,248 a year in taxes. Square feet wise, it's pretty big. 3,425 square feet. Okay, they don't tell us how much rent. They do tell us in the flood zone E, so we're going to pay a little bit of a premium to be in that flood zone. All right, well, we're on Miami Beach, basically, it looks like. Okay,